Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are all doing great. So, let me introduce today's guest facilitator. He is Mr. Rohit Swarup, founder, director of Explora Design School, and Future Explored. So, basically, sir, are you with us? Rohit, sir? Okay, let's wait for 2 more minutes.
Yeah, very good afternoon.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Pleasure.
So, yes, I was just introducing you. So, as I said, that our guest facilitator today is Mr. Rohit Swarup, founder, director of Explora Design School and Future Explored. And basically, he is into nurturing innovation through design, technology, business interventions for corporate sectors, universities, and K2 schools that can help reform and transform the domains. And he is also contributing to various Indian state governments on employment generation projects through education and helping them creating centers of excellence, R&D, and incubation accelerators in areas of management, design, and technology. And he spoke almost 300 plus seminars and forums on design, education, craft and art, technology, and management in Canada, China, and India. Sir, the house is all yours. Please go ahead and start the presentation, and thank you.
Thanks a lot for the kind invitation to this program. And I presume we are at the very end of the program with now the faculty members having oriented towards a systematic approach to developing the innovation ecosystem in higher education. So at the very onset, I see that there are few participants who have joined us here on the forum. Rest, I believe, would have gone live and witnessed the same on the YouTube. But for those who are present here, let's try to make this little more interactive. And therefore, my request would be if some of you can turn on your videos and begin the session so that it can be a little more engaging and meaningful for you in context. Otherwise, I can always deliver a one-sided talk, but will that really be beneficial to some of us in that context? So requesting at least some of you can turn on your videos in the initial part where we can interact and know a little bit about where we are and where do you see yourself in this whole program so that we can make this session more beneficial. So
yes.
Yeah.
Please unmute open your videos. Please start your videos for at least 5 minutes so that we can introduce ourselves.
Anyways, I think in the afternoon.
So our participants are very shy, sir. So they don't even respond. They only listen. That's all.
Oh my God. Okay.
So this is the case from the beginning of the sessions.
Oh, you should have actually called me a little early in the session.
Yes.
Got the workshop mode on. Anyways, let's begin, friends. For some of you who can in between turn on the videos or unmute and ask certain things or share your perspective, it will be nice. To begin the session today, I think it has been called a design thinking workshop. And as you will understand, 1.5 hours is too less in doing a workshop, but what we'll try to do is orient ourselves towards what is design thinking and how it has been helping higher education institutions, how you could actually take a benefit from the same. So having said that, if any one of you may want to share, I'm sure at your level, many of you must have encountered the term design thinking, and some of you may also have experienced it in certain way. So if some of you may want to quickly share your perspective on the same, or if you may want to know a little bit specific about it, just feel free to ask the same. You can just unmute and please share your thoughts.
Can you unmute? Madhusudan Reddy, K.S. Saran, Naveen Joshi, Lokeshwar Reddy. So there is no right and wrong answers here. Please unmute and share your opinions, please. Yes, sir.
I believe that some they may not even be there because the recording is there. So what we'll do is we'll go for the by the recording and by the template, and then later on they can see the video.
Yes,
So
sir.
having said that, friends, let me straight away begin by sharing the screen and launching our today's program by very specific inputs to uh, higher education. So if you see globally, friends, that there has been a shift that is taking place in the way decision making or policies were framed. Now, these policies can be framed at a government level, they can be framed at an institutional level. So as faculty members and as academicians, it's very interesting for us to get a first insight into that what is happening across the world. This is a glimpse of what the government of Singapore has done, is that if you see the old method of decision making in their organization, and why I'm sharing this screen is that it's been adapted by the government all throughout. So it's not just that in one department they've done, whether it's the Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of School Education, Ministry of Defense, they've actually tried to turn around the way they make decisions at higher level. And therefore, it's important to begin here so that we are little familiar that how things are changing internationally. So if we look at it on the left, we will see that how previously policies or decisions were made. For example, if we were to set up an incubator, or if we were to set up an entrepreneurship cell, or if we were to create a new framework based on the higher education policy, suppose we want to create certain framework within our university, then we would follow the process that is given on the left. So we would look at the policy, we would look at create processes and systems around it. Then we would approach the users and get the feedback from the user's perspective to how the policy is working with them. If you see on the right that now it has been turned on its head. What we are talking about, friends, is that we begin by the user. And here the user is the stakeholder. So suppose let's take up higher new education policy 2020, and let us take one aspect of it. For example, it says that faculty members be given more power in order to work with the startups or work with entrepreneurship cells where they can also have certain equity. Now, that is, if we look at a policy, that may be a point there. It may still not be very clear that how that can happen. But suppose let's take that's the policy side. What an institute can therefore do is follow the policy, say, okay, we have this in the policy, let us create processes around it, which will help the faculty members. Now, this I'm giving an example just for one area, like faculty contributing to startup by being equity holder. But we can also take up any other thing like commercializing the research that faculty members do. So the policy may say that this is what we can allow our faculty members to do. Then the universities will form certain processes. There will be systems around the same. And then we will come to the faculty members and stakeholders and say, okay, this is what it is. And so how we can help you as part of the new policy, make you an integral part of the system and get you benefit from it. But the new approach across the globe says that can we actually begin with the stakeholders? So, for example, if there is a higher education policy, first thing, can we come to all the stakeholders, pick up one of the points from the policy and engage our users, which are our stakeholders, in order to understand and get their perspectives. Based on the perspective, opinion, views, and thoughts of the several stakeholders, we create create a service or redesign a service accordingly. Based on the redesigned service, we create systems around the same, and then we go back to check with the policy. So if you see here, we are flipping the entire thing on its head. Instead of saying that we begin by policy, we are saying we begin by stakeholder, get their perspectives and opinions on the design or redesign of services, develop some systems, test that out, and then have a policy check. What this does, friend, is that it brings reality and it brings the context of different institutions within that perspective. So rather than starting by that this is a general policy and a template for the same, which gets formulated, usually we are saying let's start with our stakeholders, our institution, our faculty members, our students, our industry, our alumni, in order to, or our partners, and then in order to work further upon the same, we create services which are new or redesign them, create systems, and then make a policy check. So this would be my first suggestion to all of us, that as faculty members, where we are trying to call each of us as faculties as now um, entrepreneurial intervention in academics. So we are talking about that, can faculty members become entrepreneurial, and in order to do that, the first approach can be at a policy level, which we just discussed. Now, on the other hand, it is also very important to connect the same with the students, because they are our biggest stakeholders. So can we bring across some of the best practices from across the world, or recommendations from across the world for the benefit of students? These are some of the recommendations and changes that are happening globally in context of the students. So having looked at the policy, which is at a strategic level, student requirement, which we just quickly saw, that globally the requirements are changing. So how do we address this? Now, design thinking has proved to be one of the approaches across the world that is benefiting not just the higher education or university ecosystem, but it is also impacting government decisions, corporate and private sector decisions, as well as now has gone right down to the level of kindergarten to 12 education. So to begin with, what is design thinking and how could it be useful to address the first two things that I just shared with you? Strategic level. So each of us as faculties, if we are creating some frameworks, if we are establishing a department, if we are establishing a cell, if we are establishing a program, how can at a strategic level design thinking could be useful? And at the same time, when we look at from the eye of our stakeholders, the most key stakeholder students, we saw that some of the recommendations and points which I showed in the slides, how can those also be addressed using design thinking? So both at a strategic and a tactical level, how design thinking can work. So let's begin with the very, very fundamental aspect of design thinking, is that when we begin with design thinking, we always start with the stakeholders. Who are our key stakeholders? So what we do is we quickly create a list of our stakeholders. Now, many of us will have a question that whom should we treat as our stakeholder? So this will be contextual to the kind of domain that we have selected that we want to work in. For example, if the faculties want to work in the domain of commercializing research, then who can be the stakeholders when we talk about commercializing research? We'll come to this topic little later and in detail, but the choice of the stakeholders depends on the challenge domain that you have selected. Suppose you say, I want to make my classrooms more engaging. Now, who would be the stakeholders in this context? Similarly, if we take up a challenge of that, I want to connect the industry, academia, and society, my institution with industry and academia, then of course the stakeholder selection will be based on that context. So the first thing to do is create a list of stakeholders. And then what we try to do is that by several techniques, methods, and processes, we tend to dig deeper into the problems and possibilities that these stakeholders may have. And there are several techniques and methods that can be used. For example, the first stage we use is understand. In order to understand them, we look at understanding our stakeholders from a macro and micro perspective, understanding our stakeholders from the trends and practices that are taking place. The trends could be global trends like the current pandemic situation we were in, the trends of digitization or digital transformation of education. The trends could be popularity among students in order to study at their own pace. The trends could be globally, if we look at certain other global trends, it could be the intervention of emerging technology in education. Similarly, if we look at local trends, like where our institution is, there may be a lot of trends that are sweeping our place. For example, certain MSME zones getting created, like I know of a corridor where we are supporting in UP, there's a corridor that's getting created for defense. A lot of research and a lot of work happening by higher education institutions to support startups or research in defense happens there. Now, that's a local trend because the whole industry in that region can be supported by such kind of intervention that has come in. Or if we look at certain trends in terms of agri-tech, there is a lot of emphasis by several state and central government on how can we make our farming or produce more efficient and effective, the quality of produce being better, the outcomes of the produce being taken into different forms. So, for example, dried vegetables, dried fruits, can they be exported, raising the value of the same? Now, wherever we are, I'm posed this question that we are based in a location where we don't have industry around us, but that is highly contextual. Therefore, what I'm saying is based on the kind of locality where we are there certain trends and practices that we can notice and support? I will share some of these case studies little later in this session where we will go through some of the interesting, since the topic is fresh, let me share with you one of the interesting things. One of the universities I visited in Maharashtra very recently, just last week, they are based in a place called Karjat, which is a little away from the city, and there is hardly any industry belt there, but there are a lot of small and big villages surrounding them. And there is a very interesting sector, which is the event management sector, where some of the popular farmhouses are in that belt. Now, as part of an institution, we are always interested to connect our students with real life challenges and situations. So, if you may appreciate the kind of work that has begun, simply looking at the context. So we said, let's take up villages and understand their problems and possibilities in context of their current situation and in context of future, that some of them can actually become smart villages. But we said, let's not qualify them as smart villages. Let's just first understand the problems and possibilities. So a whole group of faculty and students went to these villages to identify the challenges. Now, some of the interesting things that came out are that in the few of the students knew that there is biodiesel that can actually be used and it could be beneficial for some of the people. So when they talk to the farmers, they realize they are buying diesel at a certain cost, whereas biodiesel comes at a substantially lesser cost than the diesel. they were inquiring with them that are you not using biodiesel? So then they understood the challenges that the villagers had to pose. Some were a lack of awareness about it, lack of availability about it, lack of understanding that whether that is beneficial and whether it will not do any harm to their farming current vehicles like tractors and all. Now, a small thing like this or hydroponics, can we grow and increase our produce where the output per square meter can be enhanced in now I'm saying this term per meter or per yard for the simple reason that can we actually look at the increase in produce in this way. So what happens, friends, is that while we are talking about this as one sector, the other sector they looked at is that how can we have technology interventions in order to support the farmhouses and increase the hospitality and tourism business there. Now, this is a very contextual place where these are the challenges that they are facing surrounding them. Similarly, I was approached by one of the pioneer institutions in our country saying that there is hardly any industry in the region where we are based. So we said, okay, let's look at that who we want to support. And by understanding the stakeholders' perspective, we realized that can we connect them with an organization like NABARD, and NABARD can give them the challenges and possibilities, and faculties along with the students and their alumni could actually help solve the same. So here, the first starting point of Friends design thinking, which says, let's make a list of stakeholders contextual to the domain we have chosen, and then let's dig deeper, spend some time with our stakeholders. Usually we say that it should be anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks, that if we can spend that time with the stakeholders on a regular basis, we will try to understand the challenges and possibilities they are facing on a day-to-day basis. Now, some of the times the students may come back and tell you that I went there, I found this challenge, or they may come back and say, I couldn't find out. So if we take the first case, they went to the village, they found a problem and immediately brought it. Many of us will recognize as a faculty that they only come with a symptom. That's not the problem. The problem and the root cause may be hidden somewhere else, like the way we create dams and how some of the soil gets eroded. Now, unless we go deeper, we'll not know, and we'll create those stepwise dams, but realizing that after some time, the richness of the soil may get eroded. Now, that to reach to that kind of a root cause, we will need to go deeper. And for that, what we do, friends, in design thinking is while we send the students to the field to observe, to talk to the stakeholders, we also give them a range of ethnographic and qualitative research techniques. By these research techniques, they are able to frame the right kind of questions, understand the perspectives, create stories and storyboards around the same, and come back with the root cause of the problem. One side of it. Second side, they also take a perspective of other stakeholders. Like in case of a village, the sarpanch, the government officials there. If we talk about farm to fork, the agriculture APMCs there. Getting a perspective of all these people also gives them a holistic insight into the ecosystem they are studying. So the first aspect of design thinking, which is here on the screen, friends, desirability side of it, or citizen centricity side of it, or in higher education, we can say student centricity, if we want to keep it very specific to them, is the starting point. We make a list of stakeholders in the context of the challenge area. We spend time with them in order to observe using various frameworks, tools, and techniques. Frameworks such as space, people, activities, AEIOU, POEMS, all these are open source and can be found for observation. Techniques for empathy, like what are the different mental models of the people and stakeholders, getting to understand their mental models and the reasons behind them, getting to empathize with them and understand their perspective at a grassroots level. So all the thing gives us latent, hidden need. And this latent hidden need, friends, we call it insight. And there is a difference between obvious answer that we bring or the root cause or the insights that we bring from the field, which gives us an interesting direction to follow. For example, as faculty members, many of us must have had this question that how can I make my classroom more engaging? Now, the answer to this question may lie deeper within the kind of the generation we are dealing with. And the answer may not be that by creating a better teaching learning aid, by better teaching learning environment. Of course, all those things are there. But unless we understand our stakeholder here, the student, how does that student think? How do they behave? What are the powers that they hold? What are their value systems? What are their beliefs? Uh, all those things, including the purpose of their education and studying that specific subject, and the outcome that is expected from it. Unless all these are explored from a stakeholder perspective, the information is generally superficial. So in design thinking, we say, let's get to the root cause of it. Having done that, we say, once we have found the root cause of the problem, we say, let's try to solve it. So we move to the second circle that you see is feasibility. Let's try to apply techniques and technology in order to solve the problem and provide a solution which is feasible. So here what we do is that we say, let's not give one solution, let's come up with at least 5 to 7 solutions by using different techniques. Now, sometime we may be misled that we are talking about technology. I'm not talking about technology, I'm talking technology or technique. A technique can also be that how simply a farmer sows a seed, or in a university, how do we hire faculty members? It's a specific technique, a process. So can we bring about a solution by making changes in that process? Of course, we also iterate it against technology so that can we provide certain meaningful solutions. So the second stage is looking at the feasibility of a solution. And the third is we talk about viability. Now, in case of a business, it is about viability, that is financial viability. In terms of education, we can also talk about impact. What will be the impact of my solution upon the larger landscape? Can we iterate that impact against sustainability, scalability, the value that will remain for our stakeholders for a period of time? So what French design thinking says is, let's identify the root cause of a problem and get to some insights. Let's find a technology or a technique, a solution, many of them, and then let's iterate them against different business models or viability. So should we reach our support our stakeholders by providing them a certain kind of services? Can it be a productized service? What could those be? What will be the implications financially of the same? What will be the impact over a period of time and over larger segment of students or people? That's the third one. That's the reason, friends, that design thinking has found a success. Now, if you see this practice, what it's a very practical approach saying that let's get to the root of the problem, then give a solution by finding 7 to 10 different ideas, and then iterate it against a business, which means that in this case, if it's a new idea, we quickly create a lean canvas because the lean canvas is flexible enough to change before we actually create a business model canvas, so that in a stage of iteration, we can keep changes the several aspects of a lean canvas. Having done that, the reason for the success you can note is this whole process is iterative. So what happens is that once we have understood the root cause, we quickly iterate against a solution. We prototype that solution quickly to create some model out of it. It could be a virtual computer-based model program, or it could be a physical model like a kit that we may want to produce. Iterate it against the business angle of it and check that viability of the entire thing. come back again to the step one, that can we change it a little bit or take a different opinion. So that whole iterative process and a cycle helps us in this manner. Here, I would like to say that two of the recently used approaches that have actually come in are, along with design thinking, can we add lean, agile, and scrum. What it does, friends, is that instead of saying that we will implement this whole project over a period of 6 months, we say let's use scrum and implement in 3 weeks and get outcomes from the same. So having said that, that was the first orientation to design thinking, what it is. So till now, friends, if we were to stop here a little and take a stock, what we began with is strategically policy needs to be formulated at an institutional level, departmental level, at a faculty level. At the same time, we also need to take care of our key stakeholder, which is students, and I showed some of the things. Now, if we were to look at both these aspects of strategic and tactical aspect, we need an approach that can help us in finding innovative solutions, whether it is for institutional development, for the betterment of our stakeholder, for the betterment of a bigger ecosystem, or simply bringing some change in a process or technique or a product. So to do that, we say we'll use design thinking, which we talked about is remembering it visually will be the three concentric circles: desirability, finding the root cause and insight, finding a technique or technology solution, and then iterating it against the business to look at the several success business factors like financial viability or impact of it or scalability. Having said that, other easy way to describe the process would be as it is on the screen: problem finding and problem solving. In the problem finding, you can see the diverse stages. We're trying to identify as many problems and then zero down onto the problem that we want to solve. Again, diverging for many ideas and thoughts, converging for the feasibility and viability of the solution. So another way of explaining design thinking. And now I'll take this simple slide and then move on to case studies. And this thanks to a very dear friend, MP Ranjan Saab from NID. Uh, he, through this diagram, could make things very easy and simple to understand for us. What he mentioned is that this approach of design that are talking can impact at a tactical level. So sometimes we may feel that, oh, design is only about aesthetics and creating a product or giving a final finish to a product in terms of color, form, and those. No, we are talking about that which is a skill-led design or a sense-led design, where we are talking about improving quality, performance, cost, and all that. But we are also talking about the market-led design, where we are talking about differentiation in a product or service. One university being different from another, one program of a university being different from other. Design could be helpful, the approach that I shared in that aspect also. Moving further, it can move into a patent-led design, where we are talking about the creative level, inventive, innovative, and creative aspects, novel solutions. So the approach that I shared with you of finding a root cause, technology solution, and business application viability could be also looked at in this level, where we are talking about original research. And then we can also talk about the same design process in a systems thinking way. Opportunity mapping, like understanding the system as is and proposing the changes. It can move to the strategic level. Just to give you an example how big this could be, some 3 decades back, the city of London was going through a trying time where they were thinking that tourism is dying. Many people who had to visit London have already come, seen the iconic places, and now the tourism is dipping. So they made a decision. Of course, UK government has a Ministry of Design, and they said, can we redesign our city in order to enhance the tourism? And so the iconic structures that have emerged in the recent decades, like the Eye of the London and those structures, the museum and those, are thoughtful implementation of a project that was to revive the tourism. Now, having said that, they didn't leave it to that iconic buildings. They said, can we also provide certain services to the people? So, for example, can our visas be relaxed for tourists who wish to come? Can the kind of process that tourists go through while they visit our city, like guides, the whole structure of transportation and mobility with the city in the city, made simpler so that people and more efficient and friendly to the tourists? So not just creating a framework or a policy or a system, but going down to seeing that can we enhance our processes and systems, our services to an extent that the overall objective is achieved. To do this, they went to the several stakeholders, not just in the city, but across the world, to understand them better. They're understanding the needs better, coming back and formulating that what kind of things do we want to change about, going to the business side of it, that will it make an impact and will we be able to revive this entire thing. Having said that, friends, we also, to a micro level, it also looked at how the signages in the city should be put up so they are tourist friendly. Now, this is just one example I'm giving you at a right from a strategic level to and change in a small service or a product. Therefore, in higher education, we can look at a similar kind of an example that can benefit us. So at this point, let's stop for a minute. We've been roughly about 40 minutes into the session. If we have any questions, perspective, views, we try to look at that a design approach could be used at a strategic level for formulation. It could be creating new universities. I'll give you that example very soon. Creating a department, creating better practices for our students, for alumni, serving the industry better. Even implementation of higher, like very recently, I've been called to many sessions that how can we implement the higher education policy within our institution to showcase that we have done something like this, because there's something that's documented. How do we make it to reality? So now, if you see what I'm talking about, the same approach is useful. Let us pick up one aspect of higher education policy, take that as a challenge, list the stakeholders, go to the stakeholders, get their several perspectives, which are very contextual to our university, not general, because the rules may say general. Many a times we say, oh, these are big institutions, they have done that, let us go there, see what they have done, bring back the best practice and apply. My request, friends, is the times have changed. This was an approach which was working very well in yesteryears, where we used to go abroad, we used to go to best places, see them, come back and implement. It has changed because our stakeholders have become more demanding and more specific to their need. So today, a student, if we bring back a best practice from IIMs or IITs or Stanford, they may say that is okay with them, but tell me how I will be benefited in my placement in my current position. How will I be given a project which is contextual to how much I know and how much I can build my knowledge? Therefore, friends, this is an opportunity for institutions and universities today that if we are able to contextualize ourselves, then we may be finding ourselves. Many times we are faced with this question that will in future colleges remain or schools remain or universities remain with all online and those things coming. I would say the universities will always be around, schools will be around. Our purpose that we are serving will change in the manner that people are expecting specific contextual solutions. If universities become relevant to these contextual solutions or needs of the stakeholder, we will definitely be there, because online has its limitations of engagement and cultural development and development of behavioral and attitudinal things. Still, of course, AI and doesn't come in a big way, but that's still some time. We would definitely need physical intervention and interaction that most of us must have noticed COVID has shown. However engaging online content is, but a classroom engagement is of a different kind. Uh, Now, having said that, it's a debate that we can have. But what I'm trying to bring out is, rather than debate on that, can we identify our own challenges and look at the higher education policy in light of who we are, not what higher education policy is saying? That's a document. How is that document to be interpreted by a university for the benefit of university, and then showcase to the officials that we have done these kind of changes and implemented these kind of things in our practice? So that's my next part. But before we go into that, we are right at a midway stage where if any one of you may have any questions, one may want to share some perspective. You may have tried something which didn't work. If you want to discuss that, I'll be happy to help on the same.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Rahul bhai.
Very nice session, sir. Very informative. Sir, in this context, I have some clarifications regarding a startup policies. So what
Yes,
are the
please.
key aspects we need to consider in a particular implementation of a startup policy? And from where to start this particular startup policy and where to end actually? So what are the different parameters we need to consider and how to frame the policy? When we see a policy from the MIC's perspective, that is very high level policy that cannot be actually, we cannot, if we can include it, we cannot satisfy all those requirements from an institution end. So what are the things we need to keep in mind, sir, when framing a startup policy? Because that keeps very essential nowadays, because institution, first thing they are asking, are you having any startup policy? Before going to some application.
Yeah,
We want to apply
that's a
something.
very valid question, Rahul bhai. And I would say that let us take the same approach that I just shared. And let's
Okay.
take the first thing. Let us identify our key stakeholders. So when we
Okay.
talk about a startup, let us say, let me give that explanation through this example. If you may just hold it, I'll give you an example which I'm wanted to share with all of us, that how institution completely rebuilt itself in terms of this aspect of employment and employability, both
Okay.
startup and other. Just hold it for a minute. I'll
Okay.
share.
Okay.
Then we'll come back to our discussion again.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else, friends, may want to ask anything? Okay, let's therefore, without wasting time, let's get on to this example and script these slides and come straight to the example. Of course, these are the common, since we are all faculty members, they are common FDP topics that I deal on a day-to-day basis. So I thought, let me share in light of all of our faculty members being here, all of these being addressed by some or the other method in terms of design pedagogy and an approach. Now coming to Rahul Bhai's thing, and also for all of us, where do we begin? So now I'll cite an example here that we were given a project. Project came to NID, and I'm part of the NID team as a senior consultant. So it came to us where it was a very straightforward project saying that we want to have another national institute in our state, and can we bring a national institute? So here in this case, it was an institute for design to our state. Very simple, straightforward. And we had to go back and tell our friends, which were ministers and government officials, that NID itself, institutions are reinventing themselves because it's now been years since our establishment, and almost half a century has passed by. And so each institution of national repute is trying to reorient ourselves. Now, when we are ourselves reinventing, why create another institution or copy and put another institution of a similar kind? So our suggestion was, let's be highly contextual to who we are, what we want to achieve. Now, where do we find this answer? So Rahul Bhai, the first thing, therefore, what we did is we said, let's identify the key stakeholders. In this case, there was ministers, there were secretary level people. Since it was an institution that had to come up in the state of Uttar Pradesh, we said, let's look at the state of industry. Also look at state of craftsmen, because there's a big 40 craft clusters there in UP. There are several artisans there. Now here, if you may notice, because we have taken the topic of design, the kind of people we are trying to identify as stakeholders are of that kind. But suppose, let us take in case of Rahul Bhai, in your case, that let's say we want to create a startup, then who could be our key stakeholders? One, our alumni who have passed out, and some of them have started some activities. What kind of activities have they embarked on? Second, the kind of clusters around us that may support entrepreneurial activity. Third, the kind of state objectives. What is the objective of a state to achieve something? For example, in certain states, there is a whole movement of bamboo and a kind of vegetation that could be beneficial to the state for the future. It could be related to a cluster that is talking about coming up with machine parts innovation. So that are our stakeholders. So government, which is in this case the ministers, the secretary level people, the craftsmen, the craft clusters, the citizens, because we were talking that this is an institute. Therefore, we should also look at the aspirations and aptitude of the young people, their motivations and things behind them. Based on that, we said, okay, once we have made a list of these stakeholders, let's take about 6 months to meet them, talk to them, understand their several perspectives and opinions, and get to the root of what should be a kind of system that we want to create. During the same, we said, let's look at some of the, through this 3 to 6 months, we found very interesting aspects. The secretary level people came back and said, out of the 40 craft clusters, almost 70 to 75% are in challenging situations. Can we revive those craft? We have the funds for it, but how to go about reviving the same? Can you help us in that? Second, when we talked to the ministers, their perspectives were clear. We want to enhance employment in our state. So can you keep an objective of employment? When we talk to young students who want to take up this, they said, my objective, like in case of startup, many of them will say, can you get us the funding quickly? In this case, the students were saying that, can we get the global best practice, hands-on experience to work with people to get to know the realities. When we talk to citizens, they said, we don't know that we have 40 craft clusters. Can there be something that can be done for us in terms of we use the produce and support them, the craft clusters? Similarly, some of the industries said that we have best practices with us, but we are missing the connect, because many a time the young students or institutes that come to us, they just come to take help from us. They are not able to contribute anything to us. So with all these experiences that we gathered from stakeholders, we said, now let us put all this data together and see that what can be come out of it. Now, this is a model that finally emerged, and I'll explain this a little bit, because then it will help Rahul Bhai also and our other friends, that how each aspect of each stakeholder was kept in view while creating this institution. So we said that let's not create a run-of-the-mill designed college. Let us create educational programs that would be beneficial to different sectors and different people. So certificate programs, diploma level programs in craft design, if you see, and craft entrepreneurship. So we said, let's not call it design, because our entire emphasis here is handicraft. Now, somebody like Rahul Bhai may say, let me focus my energies on additive manufacturing, because the industry that is surrounding me is more talking about additive manufacturing and need of parts. Somebody may say, let me focus on additive manufacturing for healthcare, because the kind of healthcare equipment that are needed, my whole emphasis can be, and because I have a bigger healthcare infrastructure around me or ecosystem. Let me focus on healthcare entrepreneurship. Somebody may come back and say, no, I'm close to this financial belt. So can I also give importance to the fintech industry and the rising industry of blockchain and crypto from a financial perspective? Now, somebody may be placed at a place which is a trading hub, and close to a trading hub may say, let me look at a blockchain from logistics perspective. So where are these answers coming? They are not the answers that we are making a decision. They are the answers that are coming through the research that I just shared by talking to various stakeholders in the region that we are present. So the realities of the region are brought into what we want to create. Now, let's say we move ahead. We have got this program in place. Now, how do we execute them? So we said, let's do one thing. Let's create a lab. In this case, we call it a studio, but let's create a lab. And in the lab, we will do that while a faculty member is teaching a subject, somebody from that artisan community will come to the classroom for 3 weeks and will work with the students to create outcomes of the learning of the subject to actual produce. Now, let's take this further. Because in case sometime Rahul Bhai may have a question here that in design it is fine or craft, how do we implement in other engineering subject? So a classic case study of MIT open source, they took up an international challenge, took 3 subjects that students had learned together and said, let's bring all of this together and create a project. And the project would be finding solution to the challenge that one of the global challenges that are faced in one of the product design, and use all the learning of the 3 subjects to create a project which will bring application of real life challenges for the product development to my students to the classroom. So in that case, instead of artisans, which in this case came to the classroom, there were experts brought from metallurgy and machine-human interface to the classroom online in order to support the students' learning of the subject matter. Now, what happened is that here the outcome that you can visualize, Rahul Bhai, through this is that some of the outcome of the classroom will be outreach program, where we are saying that the artisan says, oh, these children have worked with me and created this kind of interesting innovations. Let me take these innovations back and create an outreach program for the craft cluster for my other friends back in the community, so that they can. So for example, when we took up Madhubani painting in MP and brought it and said, can they be applied to toys? And can we create wooden toys out of that, coming completely from a different shape, perspective, storytelling aspect? So they said, oh, this could be a very interesting small toy storytelling kits, which can be sold across the world. So, for example, bringing Panchtantra stories to the classroom to create small physical storytelling models that can be narrated as a story at home or in school. Now, what I'm saying is these are outcomes. Now, these same outcomes can actually be taken in startup domains in terms of fintech or agri-tech. Like, for example, the previous example I was giving, increasing the farming capabilities and the produce. So somebody came up with, can I grow strawberries in hydroponics and come up with better produce for my farmer, and say, don't disturb your current crop. I'm giving you one more option. Try it in this small place with this produce. If in future you see, yes, this is moving better, you will see a better yield on your money spent. All that goes to the outreach. The other says that, okay, this has worked well with this artisan. Can I take it to the next level? For example, in our engineering college, suppose we have this 2 subjects or 3 subjects or 1 subject, 1 expert coming in, they have from industry, they have worked together and something interesting has come out. Then it goes to the industry and the industry says, can I apply this to my benefit? For example, I can give you an example where we were working with one of the clients, Hero Motocorp, and they said, can we have a challenge in rural that people have to transport thing also. They travel on our two-wheelers, but transportation sometimes they have to hire something. So somebody came up suddenly through the clinic an idea that can we make a convertible two-wheeler to three-wheeler. It's become very popular in its own category. And that outcome has come through a classroom project, because it was a classroom interaction where we were trying to produce some innovation for their sector. And it has become now a startup in itself. So a clinic resulting from there. Let's take this example further. So this part becomes dissemination. This becomes innovation. Now let's look at some of the people, stakeholders who said that we also want to be a part of the entire ecosystem. We said, let's create a heart within the institute where whatever is getting produced here will go to the heart and can be sold. So the artisan's cost of calling, or in case of an engineering college or university, the cost that we have to incur to get our experts, can it be looked at commercializing the research that we have taken place? So when this goes out here, it gets sold. Some of the good things go to the gallery and can become as exhibit, which can go to the national level. And some of that goes in the museum. So the citizens also get to experience the kind of output that is coming. Similarly, for government officials, it becomes interesting exhibitions that can be created around that craft form to revive. And some of the iconic can go to museum and fetch good prices for the kind of produce coming out. Now, same if we look at it, what we began with is we want to create an institution here which supports entrepreneurship and employment, with keeping the preview of where we are. Now, I hope, Rahul Bhai, you are able to connect the two. I'm not giving direct answers, but I'm giving you indirect hints of what
Yes, sir.
we did and how. Now, we don't leave it here. What happens here is that the students that have worked for, so this kind of a cycle runs through, if it's a 2-year program, it runs over 2 years. Now, not all subjects can be there where we can invite some expert. So there we club subjects together and say, let these come together. Not all faculty members may have the time and resources to contribute. So some of the subjects come together. So possibly in a year, 2 or 3 interventions of that kind. Now, repeated intervention with the students of this kind would naturally result into better real life understanding and developing of skills of the students, because they are constantly meeting at the heart. They are meeting citizens to get what is being sold and not sold, why it is happening so. With the artisan, what can be manufactured, what cannot be, why, what are the challenges of manufacturing, what are the cost benefit analysis happening, preferences of people. Learning all these repetitively over a period of 6 modules over 2 years would definitely make them better industry ready. So from employment perspective, we have better outcomes coming. On the other hand, the students working with artisans and creating certain original models, like a whole industry got developed by bringing in the rural art forms of different clusters on the mobile cover, just to make an innovative mobile guard or a cover that we use became so very popular. Some art folks went very popular in terms of small animated stories being picked up and created. So all that becomes startup ideas now at the incubator. So if we look at the whole process, what we have done here is now, Rahul Bhai, I'm specifically contextual to you, that when we look at a startup policy, it has only certain guidelines and methods that we need to address. But what are the few critical success factors for that? One, will our incubator or effort startup cell support the local MSME and large industries? Will we be able to find problems from them, bring it to the classroom and solve it, so that when it gets solved, it is addressing the industry If it is addressing the industry, industry is also interested in shelling out certain money for the sustainability of the entire project. So, for example, student scholarships that can be given by industry, and along with the problem that has been given, that if a group of 10 students brings back this, I have this small stipend can be given to all of them, and which will sustain the initiative. On the other hand, industry supporting in prototyping the outcomes of the produce or the product. So what we are seeing is that can we identify the state requirements, second, the nearby MSME and industry requirements, or the societal requirements. Like I gave an example right in the beginning, one of the institution was in middle of nowhere. So they said, okay, let's pick up agri-tech as one of the key areas, and we would want to focus on that. And they are coming up with wonderful solutions for villagers in the range of their outcomes from the perspective of AI intervention for soil quality or better produce for a specific land of piece of farm, or by varying the soil, what can we come up with? Like I gave example of hydroponics. So they're coming up with range of these ideas and solutions for the same. So the next step is looking at the domain we want to focus on based on who we are. Now, the first part of where are we, the surrounding ecosystem. The second is who are we? Are we an institution that has better resources in a certain area in terms of faculty capabilities, some past capabilities and support? All those things can decide the kind of domain we may want to focus. I have seen many times I go to places, they say, can you help us in setting augmented and virtual reality lab? I said, of course, I mean, it's not difficult. I can easily tell you and send you the list of what to do. But after setting that up, what will be the outcome? Will we be producing content for education industry? Will we be producing content for simulations in defense? Will we be supporting the smart factory by for solving? Now, if that is not in place, the whole lab becomes of no use. Now, I can give you a simple example. Today, if you search on internet for the kind of labs that can be set up in a university, there is at least 20 different kind of labs. It could be idea lab, there could be different kind of 3D printing facility, there could be an IoT based lab. There is a whole 20 list of those labs. Those are actually not needed and should be decided based on who are we. If suppose we realize that our main task is going to be taking the problem of industry, converting them into quickly small workable prototype and giving it back, then our whole lab should be more of a fabrication and creating quick outcomes from the ideas that emerge. If our emphasis is that we want to better the production of things, then of course we should create a small smart factory setup which can support at all levels and get the technology logistics in place in terms of each step of the same. So what I'm saying here is, where are we based? That stakeholders give us perspective. Who are we gives us the next perspective, and aligning these two with the vision of institution and startup policy. So, for example, should we become the soil level startup activity player? Should we become an incubator at an early stage? Should we become at a little bit of not early stage? So we may say, no, we don't want to focus on that. We'll begin with people who already have formulated some kind of proof of concept or minimum viable product and come to us. Somebody may say, no, we are accelerators. And there is sometimes people may say, no, we would want to focus only on failed startups. If your startup is not working, come to us, we will work with you to help better. Now, if you see, all of this will require different resources. And at this moment, plenty of fund is available in terms of grants in order to support. But what is missing is, are we just one more incubator, or are we or a startup program, or are we a very specific kind of a startup program that will support the region, the industry there, the society, community, and benefit the students directly, aligned with our vision of the kind of domain we want to focus on? I hope, Rahul bhai, I've been able to give that answer now to some extent, though it's
Yes,
a
sir. Yes, sir.
vast question, but I've given you where we can begin.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's
and
very
this is not too
big.
complex. A small workshops of 2 hours with faculty members in 2 months can easily give the stakeholder perspective. We don't even need to embark on a very large study. A simple exercise to our stakeholders to come back with their opinions will easily help us in getting the grounding of where to start. Once you are able to prove, because I'm also closely associated to the programs that we do at NITI and AIM, I can very well say that we are ourselves struggling to identify the uniqueness of each incubator or startup activity from one to other. And India being such a large place, if we are able to differentiate ourselves from each other and come up with unique bucket solutions for the regions or larger population, that I think is the need of the hour. Creating the files and documents is not going to be too challenging, but identifying what we want to create, which will benefit the region, which will be self-sustaining. So please keep that aspect of sustainability. How will we sustain? Will we get grants from the local industry? Some of us can say we would want to work on cooperative, like I mentioned, so we can work with crypto and they support them to find the problems, possibility, and solve them, and they would support our initiative over long run. Those are the things that we need to keep. So where are we? Who are we? And the third, how will we sustain ourselves? Okay, coming to a similar example, would you have, so anyone would have another question? Otherwise,
Yes, sir.
yes, please.
Sir, what is the difference between outreach and promotion? That is
Oh,
first question. And the
no,
second question, yeah, please answer the first
yeah.
question.
Outreach is basically a program that we conduct at a certain location where suppose it is a craft locality, craft cluster, then an outreach program is a program that is conducted for them in their locality for their specific benefit. Promotions is we are trying to say that these are all the outcomes from the institutional aspect. They could be our research publications, they could be white papers that are coming out, they could be promotional activities that promote the entire initiative and connect it with the society or industry.
Okay. The second question would be like, this courses is available right now to all over India, or it is only a particular university that is offering for particular people of region, some regions. That
So
is,
which course?
I mean, you have given the case study, right? Like, certain.
Yeah, so this is UP Institute of Design. It's already existing. Now, many other places are coming up with very contextual such kind of things. For example, I know of at least 3 more who have come up with their own original thinking, like the one at Jaipur has come up with their own outcome that they say that, no, that's for that craft cluster, let's focus with our craft clusters in our region. So now what the key learning from this is, can our institution contextualize to our surrounding, our resources, and then the policy? That is the decision I was wanting. And as I mentioned, when I say a program, the design thinking approach, which I shared in the beginning, is the approach. That's it. It does not require too much of consulting. It does not require intervention. Faculty members can come together, take up a challenge area, like I shared a whole list, form a team and say we'll meet once in a week to share our views. What are we finding from it? And and then in 2 months, we will have so much data around the startup policy, contextual to where we are and who we are. So again, I'm going to say that instead of following the policy, if I showed the first slide, Policy, process, system, then the user. Here I'm saying this user is first. Where are we? Finding our stakeholders and getting opinion. Who are we? Our process and creating our services and products, and then formulating, coming to the policy and saying, for the policy, we will be addressing it in this manner. So some of us may say we want to focus as in soil level startup policy. Somebody may say I want to look at an only AI, but only in machine learning side of it, and that too only for education industry. Somebody may come up with say, no, I want to look at blockchain for logistics. Where are these answers coming? Where are we based? Who are we in terms of our resources? And then what is the vision that we want to achieve for our institution? All this will decide. So even the lab we want to create should be based on these. Unfortunately, we go the other way. First, we create the lab and then, but it should be what is the need? What will our students do? Because all engineering colleges have a fundamental workshop. According to me, we don't need anything more than that. Unless we are focused on a certain, like for example, if we talk about a specific lab for even 3D printing, the kind of machines needed to serve jewelry industry is very different than that is to serve the machine part industry, which is very different to serve the specific plastic industry or healthcare. Now, each of this machine costs 20 lakhs to 30 lakh rupees. Which one should I take? I don't need to set up a full lab there. I just need one machine, because if it is for a jewelry industry nearby, I'll just take 125 lakh machine and just take their problem, solve it with them. Our students try to address, and so we have an outcome. That is the kind of approach I would suggest for startups today, rather than generalistic thing. Generalistic thing all universities have. They're just scattered. We need to just connect them together. But can we be specific to this? Yeah,
Yes.
I'll give some more examples, maybe one more in the last 5-7 minutes, and then take questions. The other one is a very popular one because it's been now 7-8 years. One of the universities, almost 8 years back, I remember the first vice chancellor there, Akshay Agarwal Sahab, he invited us in a chance meeting and said, can we work together to develop some kind of an innovation ecosystem around? Now, like all other universities, state level universities, they have about 4 lakh per plus students and 150 odd kind of colleges under them. So we said, let's go, when we talk of developing an ecosystem around innovation, it needs to know that who are we, like the same approach, where are we, who are we, and what is our vision. Here is an example of the steps that we went through. Each step leading to, if we see, vision and roadmap. Now, the aim was, can we create a method by which every semester we are able to imbibe the skills and competencies of startup in students. So therefore, not just an external intervention, but all students go through that. And one of the key reasons for that, which was cited, so I'm just taking this example here, stages in which we went. So revitalizing the engineering temperament first to bring originality and uniqueness. So the first thing to be done is the final year projects, instead of giving them grades on the outcome of the project, we said we will measure the process. If we measure the process, then the whole industry of bringing the projects or getting it made outside and all those things would get eliminated, and each student would get a chance to work on a original project. So things like many of us now do that have become good practice, like the Shodh Yatra to begin with, finding problems in early semester, solving those problems of community, moving on to specifics. So as we said, this will go into stages. It required, of course, this is the impact now done 55 now FDPs, because to train faculty members to become supporting the startup ecosystem, we needed this approach of design pedagogy. So now 3,500 student faculties are now in place. We said, let's not create a physical place, let's have an open school, a resource place that each college can take a benefit from. This is a whole big case study. I can share the same with you. Post that another ones like many of that with the other universities across the country, specific interventions with institutions to develop the ecosystem around entrepreneurship and innovation, very specific to their own needs and requirements. So these are all case studies which are very specific. Now, case studies related to what kind of a role should we play in a larger ecosystem? Like Rahul Bhai was saying that if I want to create a policy later on, will I play a role as an incubator at an early stage, soil stage player? All that can depend on where we are. And this chart says already it's an open source on our AIM's website, showing that how regions should be mapped. Each requirement from different regions should be simple. We were working on a project that said that can we just focus on the slum localities of Mumbai? 54% of Mumbai lives in slums. Can we just focus on the slum localities and create a startup program for the people there? Imagine the kind of challenges and the outcomes that can come originally from such localities. So being highly contextual to those requirements and then very specific, like requirements related to specific sector development, for example, e-vehicles, agriculture. So a specific program with Ministry of, like for example, like in case of Rahul Bhai, let us say that we've moved ahead and created a certain area where we need support of international players. So for example, Israel is very good in certain areas. So this incubator then worked with Israel and said that let's work together to have your startup and our startup work together and create a better outcome in a certain areas that we are focusing on. So then accelerator programs and those, but those I think what we'll do is I can be specific. You can actually reach out to me. Otherwise, it's too much information. I would like to now just answer some questions that if you may have very contextual to any area. Today, the question came from the startup, so our focus was there. But if you have it in terms of commercializing research or publications, like this whole example I can give you from one of the dear friends at IIM's. Now we conducted a program for making learning better in classroom. So we said let's connect it with giving them some industry exposure. So each team chose an organization and they studied the latest marketing activities because this is a management school. So marketing activities of that and found the problems with those organizations, came back, gave solutions through analytics and advanced analytics and all. Finally, what happened is when these students went to these companies, they realized that this is very interesting inputs they are getting for their own organization. Like the kind of content that they are putting out, is it reverberating with the kind of audience they have, the kind of UI that is being created. So after the program got over, some of these people came back and said that can we work together and can you help us creating certain MDPs? So if you may appreciate, friends who are listening, this student project can result into creating publications because these are live projects that students have done. They can become case studies, which are very original, and all faculties wish to therefore have their own case studies. Majority of the work is being done by students, and we just need to contextualize into a case study. It can become, some of them can become into interesting white papers and publications. All these are resulting from an activity that we are engaging with the students in order to have outcome. So like we discussed with Rahul Bhai on the startup thing, the same kind of intervention for real life projects can result and benefit the faculties into rich original content for use. So with that, I think we have 10 minutes, and I would wish that if anyone has any questions, views, perspective, just please feel free. What I emphasize today is a systematic approach, which is a design pedagogy that has these several steps where we understand the need of list stakeholders and understand their need by understand, observe, and empathize, articulate the problem clearly from multiple stakeholder perspective, then use radical and incremental innovation techniques to solve them, then create quick prototypes and see whether it is working or not, and then testing the same. That whole process could be applied to a startup, to an institution, to a program in order to bring the benefits. Same program and an approach is applied at one of the places in a 2-credit program. Now they have made 1 credit theory, 1 credit apply this learning of the classroom to the real life. It could be any subject. It could be a group of subjects. Like I said, the Massachusetts Institute has done that experiment, and they are converting now all their subjects into a learner-centric, project-based learning, doing which I was just explaining this whole approach. They are converting their entire subjects into this way of learning. So shifting the ownership from the faculties to the students to take up these tasks, do those tasks, learn from it, bring back rich dividend, and the classroom becomes an interesting place of discussion with the findings that the students have brought in. It also works in applying the classroom learning to real life challenges. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to share, that there is an approach that can be utilized, whether the problem may be institutional development, departmental development, applying a higher education policy, whether it is making education learning better, whether we want to commercialize the research. It could be any kind of problem or a challenge. It can be applied to the same. The approach remains same because it's a methodology, like Six Sigma is for quality. Design thinking is for coming up with original ideas to solve a challenge or a problem. Yeah, now open to discussions or questions, friends.
Thank you,
Yes.
sir. That was really very useful information, sir. And the way you explained, that was very nice, sir. So can we get your contact, sir?
Definitely.
Further, yes.
So I think post the session, can we, as a team from SKU, can you please let them, my LinkedIn profile is there as well as email, and
Sure,
you can
sir.
also circulate if you have my number. I'll feel free. These are faculty members, so we can trust them for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So we have already shared your LinkedIn profile, sir. Now, like with your permission, like we can even share your contact number also.
Yeah, fine. If there could be some help somewhere, we'll definitely want to support. Yeah. So any specific, we still have about 4 or 5 minutes. I thought some questions can be taken.
Sir, can you also help startups to develop their products in EdTech?
Yeah, we have just a program that got over, for which was in Amazon Web Series and Atal Innovation. So AIM, Niti Aayog, that program I think already is already on the net. It's an entire program for EdTech. Only for EdTech. That program we have done is only EdTech sector, and a whole masterclass series of I think 16 masterclasses to go step by step. Similarly, we are right now working out on fintech and health tech, so agri-tech, different sectors, these masterclasses, but the web EdTech one is already online. If you may just search AWS masterclass on EdTech along with Niti. It is an open source, I think. If not, let me know. That's my original content, so I can definitely share with some of us there. Yeah.
Is anyone else?
Okay, just before we leave, for the benefit, since we have 3-4 minutes and no question, let's use the time and faculty members are there. So the wish is always to share a little more that can benefit. Now, when I was talking about, I can share with you, friends, what I was mentioning as uh, the approach is some of us must be familiar that this is the kind of approach that we use in engineering. Uh, but if you see here, that kind of an approach, start, problem, objective, selecting, articulating, research, analysis, synthesis, plan the project, design driven innovation process, idea, rapid prototype. That's one model that one of the universities is working on. We help them develop that. I would suggest something like this also works very well, which I explained here. If you see, all these are tools. So it is not that we are saying that go to the field and observe and come back. How do you observe? You need tools, you need framework. So here there are range of tools that you see for each stage, and these are all open source. So any one of us can actually pick up this whole approach, and with tools and technique, use it with our students and bring better outcomes. If you may be familiar, Y Combinator was, and some of the top popular incubators in the world are using this approach contextual to their requirements. Like we just had this question, can we use the approach contextual to EdTech? So when you go through the program, all the examples, all the kind of meaningful frameworks that can be there for education are being focused there. So it's therefore becomes a very focused program onto education. But the framework I showed you remains a general framework, could be applied to any startup or any problem solving approach. It could be, it's the same we use for our industry clients like Hero or Boston Consulting Group or Ernst & Young. For some places, we are using for HR practices with Ernst & Young. For some places, it's being used for better visual communication of content that is getting created for different screens. So for there, it is that. For EdTech, of course, it will be very specific in terms of curriculum, in terms of child psychology, or coming up with AI tools for that. Could be, the list is endless, but the process remains the same that can be used. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to share the process once again for benefit of everyone. And it's open source. You can use that and to your benefit.
Thank you so much, sir, for volunteering your time to this session and giving really very good insights on this entire thing. And you have contextualized it, and our participants today are feeling, relatability was more today. So that is the reason why they have opened up. At least Rahul has opened up today to ask many questions. So thank you so much for giving your time, and we are really looking forward to have many sessions like this for different cohorts. Thank you, sir.
Indeed, my pleasure. And just feel free, any of the friends, as I said, we are all part of the same ecosystem. There is nobody who is delivering or taking notes. We both are in the same boat. While I give you the answer, I also make my own notes for learning of it. So thanks for the knowledge interaction session. Would wish all our faculties be more participated. I think the learning can go to the next level. I would only request, bring your challenges to the class or any master class like this. If you applied something, if it was not working, or you have some new way you want to know, please feel free to ask. I mean, that way we could contextualize better. And I'd like to thank SK University for actually taking this initiative of faculty development. It's the need of the hour, and good friends there, Chandramouli Bhai and so they were very keen on these activities. In fact, we are developing certain interesting programs with the university. So we'll have that benefit to the faculties and students. Yeah, thanks to the university.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, bye-bye. Yes, participants, please stay for 1 minute. So from, I think, Monday onwards, we are going to have one-to-one sessions with colleges. So make sure that like you are getting your materials or your projects onto the table for the sessions, because that is really going to help you build your project. So maybe this is the last session for the combined cohort. Maybe, like, I'm just assuming that, like, if it is not 1 or 2 sessions that we have postponed, will be conducted in the next week, and then we can go ahead with the one-to-one mentoring. Thank you, and have a happy
Tomorrow
weekend.
session,
Bye.
ma'am? Tomorrow session.
Tomorrow, I think we don't have a session, but still, like, I'll confirm and I'll just message you in the group.
Okay.
Yeah.